This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. Let's get the meeting started. This is the agenda of the regular meeting of the Board of Directors for the RGC-4B EDC. Today is Thursday, June the 18th, and it's 5:34 p.m., and we're virtual. At this time, I'll ask Commissioner Garza for an invocation and Mr. Lopez for a pledge of allegiance.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to get together and conduct EDC business, Lord. We ask you that you bless us and help us in making decisions. I want to thank you, Lord, for all the blessings that you bestowed on us personally and in our city of Rio Grande. We ask you, Lord, that for guidance. We also ask you, Lord, that you bless those that have been affected by the coronavirus. We ask that you bless those families, and we ask, Lord, that you keep the rest of us safe. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen.
All right, you got a flag here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
This flag pledge allegiance to Texas state under God, indivisible.
Thank you, Mr. Garza. Thank you, Mr. Lopez. This time, we call item number 2, finding a quorum. Ms. Garza.
Yes. Mr. Rey Ramirez,
Present.
Ms. Lori Perez, present. Mr. Fred Lopez,
Present.
Dr. Javier Margo,
Present.
Mr. Hernan Garza,
Here.
Mr. Jones. Okay, you're there, and Ms. Flores.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Garza. Item number 3, public forum. Anybody sign up for public forum, Ms. Garza?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Moving on to item number 4, approval of minutes from the previous meetings. I think Mrs. Guillen emailed those to us here about a couple of minutes ago. So if y'all have them with you, I'll give you a minute to go over them real quick.
President, there's no changes to the previous minutes. I move that we approve the previous minutes.
Okay, I've got a motion to approve.
Second.
A second. Everybody in agreement, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, left hand. Motion passes. Item number there's a lot of static, so if you might want to mute your mic.
I already muted. It was Mr. Jones' mic. I already went ahead and muted it for him.
Okay. Okay. Item number 5. Moving on. Item number 5. Financial report. Ms. Guillen.
Yes, and this is for your information only. Our report begins with our expenditures in your packet on page 5. This covers the 8th month of the fiscal year, representing 66.67% of the fiscal year, which began in October. As you can see, our expenditures are below our revenues by $251,496. In May, the city received $404,280.72 in sales tax, of which $101,070 was directed to the city. This is the second highest receipt this fiscal year. Remember that in May, the sales tax figures tracked the collections in March. It was toward the end of that, March 24th, that city orders went into effect, prompting a city and closure of businesses that were deemed non-essential. There were panic purchases going on at the end of that month, which may have contributed to that high total. We're just now beginning to see the impact of the month that followed in our receipt collections, May. If you look on page 11, you'll see that we experienced an 8% decrease from the same period last fiscal year. Overall, we're at 0.7% over the same period last fiscal year. The chart on page 12 shows how the sales tax was steady in the fall, really good over the Christmas, as indicated in the February column, before falling to lowest in the month that followed. Next month, we shall see how those numbers play out with reopening of business in May. In the meantime, we continue to monitor our budget and approve only those essential expenditures, and the city departments are the same. Are there questions about the report before you?
So we had a negative 8% or 8% decrease, which amounts to about $28,000 more or less.
We had an 8%. Mhm.
Okay.
From the same period last year.
Okay.
But overall, we're at 2.7% over the same period last fiscal year.
Okay, on the plus side, good.
Correct. And it, you know, we had a really good Christmas season, and so that, you know, that month of the holidays really did an activity that helped us stay above the fray.
Okay, fantastic. Any questions or comments?
Just to add that considering the circumstances that befell us over the course of the last several months, and to still be up 2.some%, that bodes well for businesses here in Rio Grande City. And that, again, is very positive as we get through this global pandemic. But the numbers reflect overall the strength of Rio Grande City's economy and the people that are still purchasing in spite of this global pandemic. And as we move forward, the numbers indicate that Rio Grande City will be recovering. So yes, there is this global pandemic and it's been negative, but at the same time, there's a silver lining there, which again, going back to the 2.some% increase as compared to last year's, it bodes well overall. So, and of course, that's through many of the campaigns and programs that EDC has done, and of course the board here and the initiatives that have been taken to get us there. So, again, thank you for that, and the numbers look good overall considering the circumstances.
We still had lows. Much of the valley did. We just didn't period as strong in other cities. Next month, we'll see what those numbers look like that, you know, show the activity in May where businesses were reopening back at, you know, 25% and 50% and now at 75%. So we'll start to see that that new normal for sales activity once, you know, businesses are back and fully open.
Very well. Moving on to item number 6 on the agenda. Discussion and possible action to approve Rio Grande City EDC projects and funding totals for tax and revenue certificates of obligation. Ms. Guillen. Ms. Guillen, we can't hear you.
Yes. So during the April 22nd meeting of the City Commission, they approved a resolution authorizing the intent to issue combination tax and revenue of obligation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Testing. Hear me now? No? Yes? Okay, perfect. Okay, so back in April, the city to issue a combination, its intent to issue combination tax and revenue certificate of obligation. And various qualifying projects were considered and listed for the obligations, including the following that you see listed in your packet. $765,000 for an EDA drainage project, and that's our portion of the work that is currently in progress over at the St. Ives development or right next to at the Arroyo, and $155,000 to finish out the development of the port project connected with TxDOT. And the last two, you've got $25,000 for business park plan and $762,555 for business park infrastructure. So those last two are tied to acquisition of approximately 9.41 acres of property with frontage along the Rail Line 755 north of the new Rio Grande Commercial Center development. And of course, the intent for this new land is to create a business to attract quality businesses that meet the needs and demands of the city. And it's important to look into master planning that, of course, getting it, if possible, ready for investment by getting it with off-site utilities, drainage improvements, getting it shovel business. Now, these were dropped into the mix of the city's overall finance plan. And we've talked about taking on debt. And if this is the time that the board wants to do this, and if these are the projects that the board so chooses to do, then we just need to let them know so that they may proceed with their finance plan next week. I have Mr. Tijerina on the line. I don't see him on my screen, but I know that he's here to discuss the plan of finance, which you should have received a copy of, and explain the plan as well as answer any questions. Mr. Tijerina?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Guillen. Robert Tijerina, for the record, with Tijerina, Galvan, and Lawrence, financial advisor to the city, Commissioner Garcia, Ms. Guillen, and members of the board. Good evening. I hope everybody's doing well. And I'm here to discuss the certificates obligation. As Ms. Guillen stated, we started this process back on April the 22nd, and I believe you have the plan of finance that was presented to the council that day. And on page 1, we list the projects titled General Fund INS Tax Rate. Those are the city's projects, about $13,068,000, followed by the EDC projects for about $1.7 million, and then the Public Utility District projects for about $2.4 million, giving us a total of about $17.2 million. Right now, the plan is to price the bonds on next Tuesday, which I believe would be the 23rd, and have the council consider approving the financing as final on the 24th. So on the 23rd, we'll be selling the bonds, and as Ms. Guillen stated, today would be the day if we could get guidance today or tomorrow that if the EDC would like to move forward with their projects, and it's stated on page 2 of the presentation, about $1.7 million, the city will go ahead and finance the full amount, roughly 17.2, financing next week, which would include the EDC projects of about $1.7 million. If there's any thought that maybe you want to reduce that amount and go with a lower amount and remove some projects, we could do that. And then next week on Tuesday, when we price the bonds in the market, we'll reduce the loan amount, the total amount, by the amount that you want to reduce your projects by. And then we can sell the bonds accordingly on Tuesday, and then bring the final terms and numbers to the council at their meeting on the 24th. And again, there is a reimbursement resolution. Ms. Guillen discussed it. We discussed it earlier this afternoon. believe the council approved a reimbursement resolution, which was provided by your bond counsel, Dan Martinez of Winstead. And a reimbursement resolution allows you to spend money now, and when you receive the bond proceeds, take those bond proceeds and put it back on the general fund. And according to bond counsel, what he stated, a reimbursement resolution can only be adopted and approved by the governing or the issuing body, which is the city of Rio Grande. So I know there's some projects that the EDC has already funded that is on this list. So once the bond proceeds come in, they'll be coming into the city's account. The city can reimburse themselves and then apply those funds towards the EDC, since it did pay for those projects. Based on my understanding with Ms. Guillen, the EDC did pay for the projects on behalf of the EDC. The city paid for the projects on behalf of the EDC. So there is a reimbursement resolution in place. But if there's a time or any discussion, if you want to amend in the dollar amount in the project, this would be the best time to do so.
Okay.
Commissioner Ramirez, members of the board, if y'all have any questions?
Well, I think the question to the board is, like you said, we need to look at the expenses or what the projects we want to include on those COs. And I know, talking to Ms. Guillen earlier, we already had paid, I think, $765,000 for that EDA drainage project, I believe. So moving forward, we're not here. It's not included the 150. Hold on, let me turn off this phone. Hold on. Sorry about that. I was saying that we're not including here. We have to consider also the $150,000 that we're going to be paying out as part of that incentive package to St. Ives over 10 years. Is that correct, Ms. Guillen?
That is correct.
Okay. So
Did you hear me?
yes, that is correct. So that is not included in this presentation. So we have to consider financially if we're able to afford that $150,000 over 10 years plus another payment of what is it, Mr. Tijerina, for if we borrow that
$124,000, yes, sir. And it's on the fourth page of the presentation. On the top right-hand corner, it says Case A, and it's about $124,000 a year.
Okay, 124,000. I see it now. 124,000 plus the 150 for 10 years. So we need to consider. And again, I'll talk to Ms. Guillen. Are we comfortable with borrowing that amount, or we can reduce it by 765, which we already paid? So that doesn't affect us in any way. That's already been paid for. That would just be reimbursing ourselves for what we've already spent on that drainage project. But it's up to the board. I mean, considering all the facts, considering all the scenarios. What is it that you guys feel comfortable with, and then move forward?
And Commissioner Ramirez, if I may, the borrowing the full amount of $1,700,000 and change. Again, the overall payment is about $124,000 a year. If you borrow the dollar amount that was given to me by Ms. Guillen, $765,000 a year. We're looking at about $57,000 to $60,000 a year, as opposed to just rounding up $125,000. So you have, as you stated, the $150,000 a year committed for 10 years to that project, and then you either tack on $125,000 on top of that, which gets you, I believe, $275,000. Or you tack on a lower amount, roughly $60,000 on top of that $150,000, which gets you to $210,000. And I'm sorry, it was the $375,000 as opposed to $210,000.
Right. And that's a big question, ladies and gentlemen. Do we want to add more to that monthly or to yearly payment, or are we comfortable with the lower payment? Like mentioned earlier, we already paid for the first one, that drainage project, which is $765,000. In essence, all we're doing is asking for to reimburse ourselves. So we can eliminate that or keep it and reduce the payments. Is that what we're looking at, Ms. Guillen?
Yeah, so going back to the seeking the reimbursement. So if you choose to do the 765, if let's say out of all the list of projects, you say, we would just like to consider our reimbursement of what we have already expensed towards the development, then we'd be looking at borrowing the 765 and making that annual payment of $58,000 to $60,000 a year, as Mr. Tijerina described. That would give you $765,000 that you'd be able to put back into the EDC general fund and apply it towards, for example, like Mr. Ramirez said, payment into the project incentive that we currently have over the next 10 years, or any other project that warrants, an investment from the EDC. But that's up to you if that you want to consider. This is an opportunity that the city has provided since they're seeking to borrow. It's not necessarily imposed that you must do a borrow. It could wait if that's what the board so chooses, but those are just some scenarios that you can consider. The decision is up to you.
But Dalinda, can you all hear me?
Yes.
It's all good, to borrow some of that money and start investing. But right now, to invest into that park that we have, the 9 acres.
So, Mr. Tijerina,
Yes, ma'am. Hello?
Dalinda?
I think Ms. Guillen is having problems with her.
Mr. Lopez, you were saying you were cut off. Go ahead and finish your comments.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Going through this pandemic and seeing that a lot of these businesses, we want to attract more businesses to come in.
hello.
And there you are. We want to attract more businesses to come into Rio Grande, of course. A lot of these businesses are not going to want to invest anywhere right now. I mean,
Yes.
for the business park infrastructure, we're going to spend $762,000. I mean, we already paid the 765 out of the fund balance that we had, and we still have a fund balance. And our income tax, our sales tax are going to increase within the next 2 years once the development is up and going, and we're going to be making a little bit more money. And if we ever have to fix the business park, the infrastructure, I think we're going to have money to invest without borrowing any money. And right now, personally, I wouldn't want to borrow any money and having a debt to it, because we don't know what the future has for us. Right now we're doing okay, but we don't know what the future has with this pandemic. So that's my view on borrowing all this money.
Okay. Anybody else? Dr. Margo or?
Yeah, my audio went out a few minutes ago when Mr. Tijerina was speaking. What's the main reason for needing to borrow? Is that just so we don't completely deplete our funds?
That is correct. I think part of it is to reimburse ourselves for the money already spent into that new development. And part of it, of course, is to develop the 9 acres that we got as part of that deal as a business park. And so, again, we can look at maybe borrowing half of it to have money to put into that new business park development. Or we can borrow the 1.7 to reimburse us as well for the expense already done, or not borrow anything at all. Really, at the end, we need to explore all options, and we're in a good position, like Mr. Tijerina mentioned earlier, about interest rate being so low, and an opportunity for the city to borrow these monies to develop this area, and of course to finish project that we've been talking about for a long time. So that's where we're at right now. The city's moving forward with some big projects, and the EDC has an opportunity also to be part of this venture to look at some projects that we have been considering the last couple of years.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Commissioner,
may I add some comments?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Commissioner Ramirez, I'd like to add some comments. Just to give a brief history, of course, right now is the best time to borrow. And that it's not just that we want to borrow, but let's say going forward, times get tougher and we don't want to use those monies that were borrowed. We can actually use some of those funds to pay that back. Is that right, Mr. Tejerina? That's an option?
yes, sir, on the reimbursement, absolutely.
So let's say we do borrow, Fred, and it gets tougher, and we see that sales tax continues to go down, and the economy is in a slump for a longer period of time. An option is to pay back what we borrowed with the monies we borrowed, okay? So that you pay off your debt. You still owe some interest along the way, but it would be a low interest rate. That's number one. Number two, if you want to borrow a year from now, and the economy's gotten better, your interest rates are going to be higher. And so if you do want to borrow a year from now, and you want to invest maybe in bringing in an anchor business such as like a Sam's or anything big and offer big incentives, you may not have the funds to do that at that time. Just something to consider.
Okay, because I figured that we were, it's a loan that we're getting, and I didn't know that we were able to pay back, save that money and pay back if we didn't use that money. If we weren't going to use it, if our sales taxes tend to increase like they are now, hey, and maybe we will, but remember, we just have to remember that the 150,000 that we have a deal with, and then the 125,000, Mr. Tejerina, correct me if I'm wrong, for this loan payment, that's already a quarter of our budget, of our annual budget. So because we have a budget of about $1 million, and we pay out 250,000 just in loans. That's already a quarter of our budget, and we just need to take into consideration that. Do we want to do that? And, if we're able to pay back and not use that money, if we don't have to use that money, how long can we keep it before we pay it back, Mr. Tejerina?
You have an option. It's kind of called a cash defeasance. And say, for example, as Commissioner Ramirez stated earlier, you have the options to borrow this amount, half of it, or nothing at all. And Mr. Perez is right. We have our low interest rate environment. There's an opportunity to reimburse yourself and also to pay off some of the debt if you don't want to use the funds once you borrow them. And what we would do is a cash defeasance. So say, for example, this is all hypothetical, you go with the $765,000. That gets you about $60, and I'm rounding up, $60,000 a year payback. And then you decide, well, once you put it back in the general fund, and instead of making annual payments back to the city through an interlocal agreement, because they borrowed those funds for you, say, look, we want to use this debt and we want to pay off a portion of that loan. So we'll set up and do a cash defeasance. And that way you can do away with the annual $60,000 a year committed to the city. And right now, again, as Ms. Guillen stated and Commissioner Ramirez, you have $150,000 a year. If you add that on the full amount, $125,000, you get $275,000. If you add the $60,000, you get $210,000. But again, you do have that option to, if you want to do a cash defeasance on whatever amount you borrow and say, look, we no longer want to make annual payments on it. We're going to pay back what we borrowed plus interest, as Mr. Perez said, and we'll do a cash defeasance in order to set it and pay it off at a later date. So you'll be that much debt free, whatever the amount you borrow, once we do that cash defeasance.
And just to continue on that note, this is the time to do it. I know with the city, when we were considering this, of course, we looked at all the options, including the global pandemic and what it affects us. Are we not going to have sales taxes? But I mean, at this point, it is a lower interest rate, which I don't think we're going to see in the future. The other thing, though, is the first payment is not going to start Trent, when was the date of the first initial payment of these obligations?
February, Mayor.
It'd be till February, so it still
February.
gives us some time to move between now and then, get through this pandemic before we start making payments. And I know it's one of those, because as a commission, we were also asking all these same questions. Is it the right time? Is it going to be affected? Are we going to take a risk? But at this point, as we're looking at all these major projects that we have in mind, we have to, I mean, at this point, we're wanting the EDC to be part of this, of course, because we need the EDC. And this is going to be the only way to make a true concerted effort on all these major projects that we're looking at. Because just reflecting back, this development is a game changer. There are many projects that part of this certificate of obligations, we have numerous projects that if we wait, we might not be able to come back in the future to move on these major projects. So just keep that in mind as we're moving forward with this. And yes, there's some trepidation there. In fact, as a commission, we were antsy too about the concept, do we go this much in debt? But at the same time, looking at where we're at, considering the global pandemic, and we still are relatively well, we're in a good position. And continuing with the first payment is not till February. And by then we just, hopefully we're through this pandemic and everything seems to be moving in that direction as far as treatment potential and so on. But again, going back to, we keep that in mind, this is the time, and we either take advantage of this opportunity, or are we skittish and not follow suit with all these major projects that we're considering that will place Rio Grande City in a different plane, by the way. Rio Grande City, you're seeing it right before our eyes. We continue to grow. And businesses, I know it's skittish time too, right? But nonetheless, just keep that in mind that as we're, it's we either do it or we just simply say no. And I would venture to say, let's make it happen. This is the time for us to do it. But that's my 2 cents worth.
Another thing, Mayor, is that we have, in the EDC, we had really no debt as far as, having to borrow money in the past. And I don't think we have. We did commit to that new development for 10 years. So that's 150,000 for the next 10 years. So, but really that's the only big debt that we have. It is a good time, like you mentioned, to borrow money at this time. Or, I would even feel comfortable if we reduce it by the 765, which already been paid out to that drainage project. That's already been paid out. So we can reduce it by that amount if you all feel comfortable, or borrow the whole 1.7. Really, I think this is the time to do it. We need to move forward, not be scared about what's going to happen. I think that we're in a good position to do it now, and move forward with the projects that we said we're going to do. But again,
where are we with the development, Mr. President? On the when do we see stores start popping up?
Mr. Perez, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that we're about 95%. They're done with that compacting all the dirt and all that. So
yes,
shortly
sir.
after. Yes.
Yes, sir. In fact, they did a walkthrough today to finalize the last pieces, and they were just moving the last dirt today. So that we're moving on to the next stage. As you haven't noticed, they already started doing the streets. And so we're moving on to the next stage pretty quickly and wrapping up the moving of dirt.
So we should see buildings here pretty soon.
Going up before December?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So as you probably know, and I've mentioned in the past, our Whataburger is going to be relocating onto the St. Ives development, and they're, the first ones that are having to come onto the property simply because of the lease agreement that they have where they're currently at today. And so we anticipate they will be the first ones to begin construction. We've already received in our office and the planning office calls for specifications constructions of some of the other users. And I will share some of that information with you when I provide the update during the executive session. But it's no secret that we have Whataburger, that we have Panda Express, that we have Starbucks, that we have Chick-fil-A lined up. And it's just, it'll be a sequence of construction, but Whataburger is by far the first one that has their paperwork in the city and ready to go.
If we can get a schedule, of construction that's going to be happening from St. Ives, telling us who's going to be coming in on August, September, October, November, December. It's like a schedule, because from there on we can actually work. Think about this loan, because if our sales tax start increasing, well then it's catch-22. We're going to be able to pay this loan just with those extra sales tax coming in from that development alone.
Correct.
So if the first payment is not due till January, in the last quarter of the year, if we're able to make at least 60 or 80,000 or 100,000 of extra sales tax revenue, and then from there on everything will be fine. So as long as we can do that, hey, why not? Low interest rate, and we're able to pay it back if we don't use the money. Let's do it.
Right. Anybody else? Comments? Ms. Flores?
What was the interest rate again?
Right now we're using preliminary 3.02. This is Robert Tijerina, and this was back in February. So again, we're using at that time 3.02 over 20 years, and we've all known what's happening in the market now in the last 2.5, 3 months. So we're expecting to get that or slightly lower than that, somewhere in the high twos to somewhere definitely between 2.5 to say 3%. Depending on what's going on in the market next week. But we feel it's lower than where we indicated back in April at 3.02.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So anybody else with a comment or concern at this point? So we consider the options.
Yeah, I don't have a problem. I agree with Fred on it. Only we keep it in an open mind, that if we can reimburse the money that it's not going to be used, we have the opportunity to return it, for us to take advantage of that. Other than that, I'm 100% in on this. We need to invest now and take advantage of the low interest rate, and just because we have the money means we have to spend it.
That's correct.
If I may add, I just want to remind everyone that these projects were provided to the city because they were qualifying projects under the terms of the certificates of obligation. So that I think, and Mr. Tijerina, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the general qualifying expenditures are related to infrastructure in nature, and there's certain, we can't just spend it on anything, for the exception of the reimbursement of the 765. So if you choose to approve any of the other ones, then you're pretty much allowing for expenditures to go towards those related activities, not something outside of the scope of the CO terms. Is that right, Mr. Tijerina?
Yes, ma'am. You can only reimburse yourself for the eligible projects that were pretty much described in general terms in the notice of intent.
Very good. So at this point, is everybody comfortable with 1.7? And so we'll, I guess, entertain a motion, or if not, continue more discussion.
I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and take the loan for the full 1.7 million.
Okay.
I'll second.
I got a motion by Dr. Margo, second by Mr. Lopez. There have been agreement signified by raising your right hand. Again, against left hand. Motion passes. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramirez, members of the board, Ms. Guillen. I appreciate the opportunity to present the information and have a discussion with the board members. Thank you all so much. Take care, and everyone be safe.
Thank you, Mr. Tina.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda, item number 7, executive session. Under Chapter 551, Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney, Section 551.087, Texas Local Government Code, deliberations regarding economic development and negotiation. Ms. Garza, are we going to log off and then re-log in with a different code, or how's that going to work?
Yes, Mr. Ramirez, I emailed the board members a special link to the executive session. And so you will sign off of this one and sign on to that one. And then that'll put us into executive session.
Okay,
But-
good. Yeah, I just saw the email. Okay,
Did he call out the time, Elisa?
it is 6:15.
Okay, so yes, please follow the link to the executive session.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, at this time, it's 6:36 when we're back from executive session. Item 8A, there is no action. Item 8B, no action as well. So we'll move on to item number 9, discussion and possible action to approve a design concept for the entrance at the Basilio Villarreal Municipal Park. Ms. Guillen. We can't hear you, Ms. Guillen.
Okay, there we go.
There we go.
So if you remember back before we started this fiscal year in September, the board approved to include the installation of an entrance sign over at Basilio Villarreal Municipal Park as part of this year's work plan. So in coordination with our Parks and Recs department, we developed a concept that incorporates the existing design elements of the park. If you look on page 26 of your packet, an example shows the same style, color scheme, and material found in the park's basketball pavilion. If you approve, we'll go and seek bids for the construction and installation of the sign and coordinate its placement with, the city Parks and Recs and administration. But
Is that the location you all selected there at the?
we kind of felt that a sign would be most appropriate on the eastern side of the fence. So because it's a very limited space on the west side of the fencing or of the property.
Okay, well, what was the total cost of that sign, Ms. Guillen?
We don't have it. We don't have an estimate for it. We just have a design that we are.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because we talked about different concepts, and so in talking to Parks and Recs and asking them what is it that you would like to see, they liked the idea that we would incorporate the columns that are there at the pavilion, and go with a sign that complements the current look of the park. And so the location we felt was better on that side of the driveway. And it's up to you to decide if you think that this type of sign is something we want to pursue. We'd go price it out. But if you think that the sign should look different, if you don't like this look or style, please let me know so that we can go back to the drawing board with this.
Hey, Chachi, hadn't we said something about putting up where the big gate is at, next to that sign there? A big old sign on top of that gate where it's readily read from the highway, or not, you'll notice it from the highway. I think we had talked about that in a couple of meetings back.
I think you're referring to a sign out there by the fire department, correct? By the old water plant? There.
No. we had talked about maybe a
Park.
sign, putting up a sign about maybe 10, 12 feet high over the main gate of the park, you know, something nice, Basilio Villarreal Park. You know, putting it up there where it's visible from the roadway.
From some
I
Hateful
thought we
Street
had
or
talked
from,
about that. Excuse me?
Sometime back, Fred, we talked about putting a sign on top of the gate, one that was removable in case a big trailer came in.
Mhm.
I
And I-
remember
Yeah.
that conversation maybe about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago.
The concept that was mentioned about it was like one of those not an arch, but we talked about what the county park has, and so we also discussed that we get trucks into and out of the park, that we were afraid because of the activities that we have there, concerts and such. You bring in stages, you bring carnival rides, you know, just how high do we have to go with that? And will it work? And so, you know,
No higher than you can go as high as 17 feet. You know, 17 feet above, that's where 18-wheelers, all our traffic lights are about 16 feet and 18-wheelers pass by them real good. So not unless it's an oversized, but 16 feet, it should work out because 18-wheelers can go through it. And if you put it that high, you'll be able to see it from the roadway.
I mean, we could
I
still
mean,
do
this sign, don't get me wrong, I like this sign also. I like it.
it's a ground sign, but if you want to go back to
Right.
something that goes over the fencing, we can bring that back to you. There are companies that focus on that, and we can get a mock-up of what that would look like at 17 feet, and bring that back to you if that's what you.
yeah, I like the idea. Give some options and then we can look at which one we like the best.
Okay.
And consider the price as well, as you know, so.
Okay.
We got
Yeah, so the only advantage of this one is you can take a picture around it a little more easily. If you have groups or whatnot taking pictures, a little bit easier to get that on the, all around the sign versus something in the air. You got to stand way back to try to get everybody in.
that's true too.
I can bring back other options, the overhead option, and you've seen what the ground option is, and you can let me know how you want to proceed.
Yeah, I like that sign, the first one, the ground sign, but it seems to be a little bit short. I don't know how tall it is, about 6 feet maybe, or a little bit higher.
Whatever the fence.
It looks shorter than that. The fence is about 6 feet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, let's explore options. And
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
let's
can do
explore
an over the gate option, and we'll look at what that would one look like and two cost us. How does that sound?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think, the arch, it doesn't really need to be that high as long as it's, made out of aluminum or something light where you won't have any problems removing it. It's not like if you're going to be removing it every day, or you're talking about the 4th of July, when you put a carnival in there or something like that. So it's, we can be able to design something that's light, where you can be able to remove it real easily. And I think that's,
Okay.
I would like something like that.
Okay. We'll go back to the drawing board. We'll get us a light removable sign that goes over the gate and see what the cost.
Okay. Any more discussion on item number 9? Okay, so I guess there's no action. We'll just, Ms. Guillen, just go back to the drawing board and get us more options, and so we can consider that for a future meeting.
Absolutely.
Moving on to item number 10, Executive Director's Report. Ms. Guillen.
So first and foremost, I want to thank you guys for your time and consideration of our work. Your support and your guidance is always valued and appreciated. This pandemic provided us the opportunity to rethink our service delivery and adapt to new strategies, as you can see from our virtual meeting today. In addition to being available by phone, email, text, social media, chat, you name it. We've employed a virtual customer service model to resume our work throughout this pandemic. And this has actually brought us closer to our business customers who depend on us for critical information, like the action that our city commission took just before this meeting. So, you know, just know that we're making sure that we're communicating with our business customers, and that we're doing so virtually in many cases. But we're also making preparations for reopening and initiating rules such as requiring the facial coverings and temperature checks, hand washing, hand sanitizing upon entry. We're providing heightened disinfecting of our offices and installing protective barriers, the sneeze guards, as they call them, in high traffic stations. But you know, the safety of our team and our customers remains of utmost importance. So I just wanted to let you know that we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're providing a safe environment for our employees and our business customers when they come back into our office. So on page 29 of your packet, we did put together a short summary of some of the activity that we have. And actually, I don't have it in front of me. Well, actually, I do. Okay. This is it. As you'll see that in May, the Workforce Commission released the April labor market and employment records or reports, and there were, you know, increases in unemployment across the region. Hidalgo County increased from 9.7% to 18.2%. Cameron County increased from 9.7 to 17.1%. Williston County increased by 7.1% to 17.4%. And Starr County went from 8.3, a very great low, to 24.3%. And so that's where we stand. We will update you on the next report and keep you posted on how those numbers play out. But everybody saw a decline in unemployment across the region. And you've seen our sales tax figures as well. But in this whole pandemic process, we did, as I said, reach out to our businesses, and we even put out a business survey to get their feedback on what their impact was at their business, whether they shut down, whether they saw revenue lost, whether they had to let employees go. And we worked with the planning office to get some of those responses and push that on our social media pages. And so that is something that we did in all communities across the state. At least we're pushing a business survey to hear from their businesses. And we also updated our website. We've got a link, and so does the city, on COVID-19 information. And, you know, we added new pages for news and resources. We created an online directory of those restaurants that are offering curbside. It's become the norm now to just pick up. In fact, HEB just installed a curbside delivery. So, you know, we wanted to keep up to date with some of that, and we have it on our website. You know, businesses are calling us all the time about what funding is available, and SBA released information just the other day about funding opportunities. So we're directing them to those resources as they're becoming available. And, you know, they're depending on us on it for advice and referrals, and we're you know, keeping up with that. It has slowed down some. Some of our businesses were able to secure those PPP loans, but not everybody had a chance. And not everybody had a chance to apply for the EIDL loans, but now that they've reopened, you know, they're going back and trying to introduce that, you know, try to get back into applying for those loans and grants. But I know the mayor has been very active in the project to introduce the best business practice window, well, not best business practice window, but the best business practice for COVID in our community. And so we've asked the business community to show us that they're taking precautions and enforcing the masks and the cleaning and all of that. And we've had a couple of businesses that have called us up from the very get-go when they reopened that they were doing that. And the mayor and Gilbert were doing some surprise visits, and they were able to issue out those really nice decals, and you'll see them up at some of those businesses We have that link of the list on our website. We had a total of 18 as of the 17th. And now with, the requirements to wear face masks, we're hoping that everybody is going to do what they need to protect our community. And then many of you drove through downtown and saw how that lot over by the city cemetery, the Firestone lot, got cleaned out. And so, as you know, we've been working with Gilbert on this project, and we continue to identify properties to clean up. And so I'm sure you've heard, we've received many positive comments about the cleaning of that lot. And we continue to push that project throughout the downtown community.
What was provided
we did
there?
We did the roll-off containers.
Okay.
And so that just cleaning out that lot there costs about close to $3,000 in the container and disposal of all of that debris. And so we had money set aside in our work plan so that we could fund that, and proven to be successful, because we have a lot of people say that it was great that lot had been cleaned out, and so that was our participation financially, sir.
Okay.
Commissioner
owns that lot?
Ramirez.
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
I would like to add that, Gilbert has done an excellent job in working in the downtown area. It's not easy to get these locations that have not had any active businesses in their areas cleaned up. And so he's done a tremendous job just being persistent and following up and making sure that they understand the offer from the city, that the collection of the trash can be, helped out by us providing the bins for them to put the trash in, and it's taken away. They have to do the work themselves. So
Right.
kudos to Gilbert Milan, because he's put extra effort behind it.
I agree. Yes.
Great.
Also, I was going to ask you before I forget that building there on Britain, the old Dr. Narro building, there's some work being done, or is it the same project where we're helping out, or what's going on there?
No, they're doing this on their own, but obviously it's been brought to their attention that the top part of their building was kind of coming apart. And for those of you that remember the Gaymar building and that, that's what was happening with this. And so the owners had actually stepped forward and contacted us and asked us, what's your recommendation? They're going to be doing some painting. They looked for us for the guidance on the colors and things of that nature. But if you notice, it looks really nice and clean. And our concern was that we have people that do use our sidewalks, that do walk on in front of that building. And we were just afraid that was going to, that roof or that whatever stucco that was on the building was just going to come apart and injure somebody. But they cleaned it up.
Is that building still owned by the Narro family, or who is it owned by?
It's in the Narro family. We've been working with them. Mrs. Narro is the one that Nancy has been talking to about that.
Okay, great.
Of course,
also, I believe that property, I guess, west or just next to that Rio Bank, there was a 1.1 acre there. Who bought that property, and what are they going to build there?
Right next to
Rio
It's a border town, Commissioner. It's a border town. Will be next to Rio Bank.
Another border town?
Another
Yes.
border
Yes.
town right
Really?
next to Rio
So we'll
Bank.
have 3 border towns within like a 5-mile radius?
Mr. Peña has done his homework, and he's doing very well financially there at the current location, and enough and so well that he's already purchased that property and will be building very soon.
Wow.
Which of course will improve that area as well.
Right.
Isn't that like a little flood area though?
Right next to Rio Bank.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's like a
there's,
street.
there's a flood area through there.
There's a creek that runs through there. There's a
Yeah.
creek that runs right next to it. And we've gotten some calls about that property that Mr. Peña wants to develop.
Well, part of
So-
that, of course, is to improve, and of course, drainage is going to be critical. So when the plans come in place, that's one of the things that planning will have to be looking at to make sure that there's adequate drainage. And of course, as we're managing our master drainage plan, we need to make sure that that is critical because, and that goes for any future development, of course. We need to be cognizant of the drains and where they go and to make sure that there's some improvements to the drainage in those areas.
Mhm. Not just the property.
Correct.
Mhm.
Ms. Guillen, you mentioned the Firestone earlier. Who owns that property now? Is that something that we have for sale or?
No. So the person that purchased it was Jose Luis Garcia, the contractor. That's
Oh,
who
okay.
that's who I've been told, and I've seen him out there on the property. So I haven't had a chance to visit with him to see what plans he has for it. But he's
Great.
the current owner.
Very good.
Do you still own that property right next to that old Firestone property?
My dad owns, or he's got the little sliver that was the old Los Patines, which is directly across from that new property that was going to be next to Rio Bank. So I know that that's a creek because we have to clean that out every so often. We've been having some work done to try to maintain that area in there. Actually, Mr. Mendoza is going to be going out there and cleaning, doing a little fire lane again sometime next few days, what he told me.
Okay.
You have a list of some of those virtual events that we've had, one being the first virtual Memorial Day observance. And I want to congratulate Nancy and thank the mayor for participating in this virtual observance. We had former Lieutenant General Ricardo Sanchez participate. He gave a very powerful speech during that memorial, and we just, I thought it was great that Nancy took the initiative to proceed with it, because we know we couldn't have this gathering in our downtown kiosco like we normally do, but it was well received, and we got plenty of compliments on that. And we continue to push the online platform. On the back of the 2-page report, you're going to see the Science Counseling Building. I don't know if you've driven by there on Florida Street, but Ms. Science finished out the work that she had proposed to do. And so we didn't get to put the before pictures, but you'll see the after. And it looks really nice. I think she really cleaned up that property well. And then, of course, the Mendes and Robles, they're still working on theirs. St. Ives Development, these are just again, the users that are coming in. And then, the census is something that we've really been pushing to, the county reached out to us the other day. They want to, work with us on another strategy, because they know that now that people are really being asked to stay home, that, we've got to push for the self-reporting. And so we do have an event coming up at City Hall, July 10th, that the Census Partnership Specialist requested of us. And so she's going to be out here at City Hall to help anyone register who might need some, do their census survey, but it'll be in person. And I don't know if, how that'll turn out. I don't expect a huge rush of people coming in, but people are paying their water bills, and so we're hoping to capture those as they're coming in to fill out their survey. Maybe some pain with and has been done some taping, sir. Is that something you've already finished? Because I know Ashley's been working with you on that. Okay. Hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I guess the mayor didn't hear me, but he's been on the Univision to promote the census, and right now we're at 41.7% in self-reporting. The state obviously is higher, but we want to continue to push the message, and you guys are people in the community that are trusted, and so when you talk to your constituents, be sure to let them know that it's extremely important that they complete this survey. It takes just a couple of minutes to do it. And so hopefully July 10th, we'll see an additional, push for surveys being completed. And then we gave you some small examples of what those visuals look like in the pandemic response. I don't know, I know I got one of these tags, but the thank you for helping local businesses, we printed out, I don't know, hundreds of these, and we distributed them to local businesses and had them give them out to their customers through the drive-through window. And so it was, well received, and it just kind of reinforced that we want them to shop local. And so these little tags were stuck onto the bags at, Dairy Queen and, even Bobby's, if you were picking up your to-go plate there. And we also have the Eat, Shop, and Play Local Facebook page that Melinda worked on, and it's it kind of works on its own. We have most of the businesses that are on there are constantly pushing their promotions there. So it's driven by the business community. If you have Facebook, check it out. You'll see what kind of activities the local business community are having. And that's really it. It's just a summary. There's just so much activity, obviously, and we tried to confine it as much as we could to 2 pages. But I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Ms. I have a question. Just how fast are they updating the times when they're open, etc.? I know we keep running into the issue at Whataburger, for example. I guess we just don't go out there enough lately, where we get there, we submitted the online order, just they cut off at 9. And we knew that they were going to, actually, it turned out they cut out at 8, is not 9. And so little things like that. I'm sure we weren't the only ones running into that issue. And I know we don't, our page, I just clicked on it, shows till 10, but obviously they have some little variations when they have their online ordering.
We probably need to circle back with them. But yeah, we ask them to let us know when they do make a change so that we can update that. But I'll be sure to follow up with them. It's important that we do so that we're providing the most accurate information.
Yeah.
Very well, Commissioner Perez. You wanted to update us a little bit on the 4th of July celebration? Mr. Perez?
Yes, Commissioner Ramirez. I just wanted to bring up that Sarah is online. She's been working on planning July fireworks display. But considering the latest COVID-19 issues that have arisen lately, kind of want to put it out on the table and for discussion for you guys and see what your thoughts are. Sarah, are you online?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, would you tell them when you were planning to do it and what the idea is?
Well, basically, the idea was that we were going to have it July 11th, which is the Saturday after 4th of July. And we were going to do it drive-in style at the Basilio Villarreal Park. We're obviously going to require city staff to help us make sure that people followed the social distancing, just stayed around their cars, create lines for the bathroom that were 6 feet apart. So we started by having a coordination meeting with all the different department heads to kind of just discuss ideas, which at the time we were still not seeing the big numbers. So this week I went ahead and revisited with Chief Castillo, and he recommended at the time that we discuss possibly postponing it, just because, unfortunately the coronavirus has now affected some of the city staff, and we don't know what kind of situation we'll be in then, if we'll even have enough staff to man this type of event.
And I do agree. I think we should postpone it. I mean, at this point, just the idea of bringing in that many people in a congregated space just would not be, one, the optics wouldn't be too good either, but just the manpower that it would take to make that happen puts us in a predicament where we definitely do not want to expose anyone or the circumstances that, I mean, again, the spread of this COVID-19. In lieu of where we're at in the increased number of cases, we have to be very careful about bringing in people together. And the reality is, once we do that, then people will congregate, and it's going to be hard to separate. So again, that's something to consider as a commission, as board members. Should we go in that direction at this point? And again, my take would be to postpone it to a later date once we take a hold of this pandemic once again.
I agree, Mayor, in postponing. The only question I was going to ask Sarah is, do we have any contracts signed or any deposits that were given? What's the status on that?
Well, the good thing is, no money has been spent at all. The
Okay.
contract was gonna appear in the city agenda for next week, so that is, so we're obviously in good timing to do all of this and not worry about any money being spent.
Good. So there's no commitment at this point. We can postpone as much as we want to.
Correct.
There was a,
We need to realize that this is not the second wave of the coronavirus hitting us. This is just the first wave. Got here kind of late, and we haven't really, seen the real effects of the coronavirus. We're just feeling them now, and I think you made a good move in postponing that, because I don't know where we see ourselves here in the next few months. So.
and there was another city in the valley that postponed their 4th of July celebration. I'm not sure if it was Westlaco, but they had a contract already in place, and they had the ability to postpone it and let their performance happen at a later time. So if we do go into some type of a contract, let's just have it stipulate that if we need to postpone it, we don't know if that might be necessary, that we have that option. They were getting that asthmatics, I think, in West.
Oh, man.
It was San Juan.
Oh, San Juan, yeah. And so they're just going to perform it another time. So, but they were able to.
Get my bedroom.
Speaking of, Mayor, and this probably, sidetrack a little bit, but are we considering some type of curfew, bringing back a curfew for the city? It's just a question that's been asked, and
I'm glad you asked, because yes, we just passed, prior to this meeting, we had an emergency city commission meeting, and Dr. Vasquez came on, and the local health authority, and we discussed that. And yes, there will be a curfew from 11 to 5, and businesses will be required to wear face coverings in businesses, both customers and employees, any public spaces. So yes, that is something we just approved, and we're going back to what you were saying. We need to minimize this spread, contain it as much as we can. I know we were excellent prior to reopening, but before it slips out of our hands, we need to take action, and we did. And I'm glad that the commission felt the same way about moving forward with that. I know it's going to be difficult, but I think we're very well equipped to make sure that people continue to promote that message of sanitizing and social distancing, face coverings, and hope that we can contain this and not let it slip out of our hands as the numbers keep on rising. In fact, the other day we had 40-some cases. Previous day was 16, I think 13 or so today, or a little bit more than that. So the numbers just keep piling on. So, but yes, we did take action, and we are moving forward on that. So there will be some containment of it, or we hope that there's some containment. And the whole county was in agreement with that, by the way. The judge and the other municipalities will be, if they haven't already, they will be taking similar actions. City of La Grulla, Escobares, Roma, and ourselves. And of course, in a county.
Very good. Anybody else? Any other
Just a
comments or any other?
Quick question about the celebration. If we do postpone it into, August, for example, are we still going to call it a 4th of July celebration, or would we change the name to a summer celebration? Or
I think it would be
we're going to call it a canicula celebration.
it's going to be We Survived Corona celebration.
Solstice, baby. No, that's
It's all right.
It's,
You're right,
Freedom,
the first wave.
it's no Freedom Fest, even though it's not gonna be 4th of July, but it's Freedom
Freedom
Fest.
Fest can be any time during the year.
Yes.
I strongly recommend we just focus on, doing something for el 16 de septiembre. That's what I say.
Right. God willing, we're in a position to celebrate at that time, but we don't know. Like they say, the worst on the first phase of this wave, and if we get a second wave later in the fall, then it's going to be interesting to see how, where we are at that point. But yeah, I mean, we'll just keep our options open, and hopefully, God willing, we'll be able to celebrate in person pretty soon.
Do we have enough PPE for the city employees that are having to go out into and interacting with the public? I know that a lot of the medical community are still having trouble getting PPE, not just here, but across the state, as far as gloves and masks, even simple surgical masks, not even the N95s or hand sanitizers. I see that Linda probably using hand lotion, but hand sanitizer.
My hand sanitizer.
Yeah. Do you guys know, is the city having trouble getting that?
Mr. Perez, I don't know if you want to respond to that. As far as the EDC, our staff has the equipment, the hand sanitizers. We were able to get some for the office. We just recently got some additional disinfectant. For a while we were issuing out disinfectant to the business community. And so we were able to keep some ourselves and we use it and apply it here in our building. Masks also, the fire department has gone above and beyond to try to get those supplies out for us too. They're the ones that have gotten us masks, and yeah, you're right. If you shop for them, they're hard to find. But I think that there has been several cities that have been working with each other in providing some of this equipment so that no one is short on supply.
We just ordered some additional masks today in anticipation of the second wave, like Fred brought up earlier. So we are planning ahead because we do know there's a lag time in securing, for example, the mask alone. So we are looking for hand sanitizer along the way because it's not easy to find. So we are shopping around and making sure we get the best prices, but we also know we have to order soon before the next wave hits.
And then, Mr.
There's a lot of price gouging going on. Just be aware.
That is correct.
And false equipment.
Yeah.
Right.
Mr. Perez got all departments across the city the temporal thermometer so that we're all able to, take our temperatures when we come into the office. And then when we finally open to the public, we'll have to do the same to those that are entering City Hall or any of our offices. I know that the county is already doing that.
We purchased enough devices in case we ever have an event and we want to take a temperature for the masses. We should have plenty on hand to hand out to staff to help us out.
Keep in mind, just so you guys are aware, even we have screeners at the hospital. And even last week when I was working, actually Saturday or Sunday, we had some variation in the screener and what we were getting in the triage area, to where we actually triaged a couple of people that actually had fever, not in the fever rooms that we have set aside, but in triage where we were all exposed. So it wasn't anybody that was COVID positive. They had other issues. But just so you're aware, the screener needs to know how to do that well, and be diligent about doing it every time with a proper way. One of the nurses went and educated them, the person who was actually screening at that moment, and they started getting reliable temperatures that we were consistent with inside too. So just keep that in mind. Having the thermometer is not magic. It's all about how you use it. It's just a tool.
Is there any way we can get some training on it?
Probably. I would say maybe talk to Ms. Munoz there at the hospital, and I'm sure they'd be happy to help.
Awesome.
That would be good.
That's a good point, Doctor. Thank you. Ms. Ginn, anything else, Ms. Ginn, before we adjourn?
No, sir.
Okay, well, again, congratulations to all staff. You guys have been doing an excellent job, Mr. Perez, all city staff and EDC staff. You guys again, a lot of work behind the scenes. So thank you all for keeping us safe. And again, reminder to everybody listening, again, don't forget about the census, like again mentioned earlier. It's important that we all participate. And again, if there's no other comments or concerns, then we'll, I guess, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Keep up the
moved.
good job. I so move. Second.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, it is, see, what time is it?
It's time to eat.
7:15. 7:15. Time to go eat. All right. A good day. Rest of the evening, guys. We'll see y'all. Thank you.